Good evening. This is the 8th meeting and the last meeting of international exhibitions and webinars of Design Studios. This is the 8th meeting, yes. Until now, we realized 7 meetings in each. We opened 2 exhibitions and we hosted 2 guests. Tonight is a little bit different because we are finishing this series with 3 young academics. Of course, each of them have older teachers behind them who are backing them up. But I really love these 3 people. In fact, I've just met Bartosz very newly, but I really like these 3 people who are really affectionate about what they are doing. So I feel lucky that I am finishing this series of events with them. Senem Yıldırım is from Gazi University, and she will be presenting about the basic design education in our department. And İrem Küçük is from Gazi University. Again, she will be talking about Studio Z. And Bartol Sawaki is, I'm not sure if I'm reading your name right or wrong.
Perfectly good.
Thank you. Okay, is from Poland, University of Bialystok, and he will be presenting what's happening in his institute. Senem Yıldırım is working with Professor Arzu Özen Yavuz. She's not with us. She's living very happy days nowadays. That's why she will not be able to attend, but I would like to say my hello and love to her. İrem Küçük works with Professor Adnan Aksu, who is coordinating Studio Z, one of the most popular, well-known, and I think very famous studios of Gazi University. Bartosz, I don't know your story. I'm sure when it is your turn, you will tell it perfectly. So I want to start with Senem Yıldırım, please.
Thank you so much for your kindest words.
Okay, it is yours. Stage is yours, and you can share your screen and start your presentation, please. Thank you.
I will try to share my screen. Hopefully everything goes well.
Sure, perfect.
Can I see it?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me as a presenter today, and hello everyone. I'm addressing you today as a part and representative of the team conducting the first year design education at our department. If you don't know me yet, I am Senem Yıldırım Evsen. I have been teaching first year design education for over 10 years with Associated Professor Arzu Özen Yavuz, who unfortunately could not be here today, but she has been teaching these courses for over 20 years now. A little bit about me, again, if you don't know anything about me, I had my bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees from Middle East Technical University. I'm currently working as a postdoctoral fellow at NYU in New York. Although my expertise is in architectural history, I'd like to think that I have enough experience to address you today as a part of the first year design education team. Today's presentation is on our teaching methods, and I would like to talk about one specific project we did in the spring semester of 2021. And through that project, I would like to present the students' general approach to the studio, design strategies, teaching methods, and our curriculum. However, first, I would like to briefly talk about who we are and what we teach in general. We have quite a large team teaching at the studio with us. We usually have approximately 100 students enrolling to our department each year. So this quite large team works very hard. I would like to thank our team, Arzu Özen Yavuz, Elif Tektaş, Sena Gülbahar Tuncel, Gülce Sözen, Gizem Özerol, Salih Erdurmuş, Eren Demirel, Metin Kurumak and Elif Çam for their continuing efforts in the first year education and in their help to introduce design to future architects. As presented in the previous talks in the series, our curriculum in the department has 3 different layers when it comes to design studios. First year education, followed up by Studio 201, and finally vertical studios that students enroll until they graduate. The aim of the first year design education is to facilitate both an abstract way of thinking for students, but also more importantly, to initiate the spatial thinking, where they were introduced the basics of designing architecturally. First year design education in our department includes 2 modules. First module that is taught on the first semester of first year is basic design and is followed by architecture project 2 in the second semester of the first year, a course we like to refer to as Introduction to Architectural Design. Our team teach both courses, and today I will mostly talk about architecture project 2, especially through the project I mentioned earlier. However, I think it is important to talk the first year design education as a whole and a continuing segment, as these 2 modules usually court one another. I will briefly talk about basic design and how we teach the course so that our teaching methods and curriculum in architecture project 2 will have a broader context for you. The basic design education, which is implemented as a freshman year studio training at design schools of not only architecture, but of many disciplines which take their roots in creativity, has a particular importance in developing students' mindsets. Despite its practical and contextual differences among the institutions worldwide, the basic design studio commonly aims to facilitate the students constituting a design language and a way of abstract thinking, while introducing skills such as communication, visualization, and representation, leading to architectural design thought process. Today, the curricular and procedural distinctions of most basic design studios are set as bare adaptations to Bauhaus origin, in which various fields of art and design were associated in an interdisciplinary manner. Our take in the teaching methodology for basic design is similar to the Bauhaus École in its interdisciplinarity. Our main aim in basic design is to establish an abstract way of thinking by introducing basic principles of design while encouraging learning and deriving from design adjacent fields and tools of visual communication. The main goal for the end of the course is that the students would have a grasp on 3-dimensional compositions and the formal relationships of solids and voids, which would help them develop necessary skills for the next step when they start to design habitable places and the relationships of one spatial void to another. Our curriculum mainly has 3 stages. We start by working on 2-dimensional compositions first, then we give students a problem which would encourage them to discover methods to design compositions that are in between, that are both 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional inspirations. And finally, they work on 3-dimensional compositions. Students work on 3-dimensional compositions during the first few weeks of their semester. It has always been a challenge to teach basic design, since in Turkish context, students come to architectural schools with no previous education in design, art, or architecture. The first thing we try to achieve is to reconstruct their existing norms on aesthetics, to leave them enough space to find their own unique ways of designing. While working on 2-dimensional compositions, the students get to play around different geometrical forms and colors, while learning and researching from other disciplines. We borrow cases from other design adjacent fields as design problems to work for them on their abstraction and compositions. We usually give them a movie to watch to choose the scene from, or a book to read, a video to watch, a magazine cover, an object, or even a video game interface to abstract into a composition. You can see 3 of the examples from those assignments here. If you have any questions about the specifics of those assignments, please let me know later in the questions section. The transition from a 2-dimensional composition to a 3-dimensional one was proven to be very difficult for students. We adapted various methods to help the students to develop a better understanding for transformation from a 2-dimensional composition to a 3-dimensional one. This particular example is from an assignment where the students were given a single cardboard to fold it into a structure to better understand formal relationships between voids. We also introduced, as you can see, the use of computer-aided design in this stage. We think that 2-dimensional compositions are ideal for them to play with the materials. We find it quite helpful for freshman year that model making provides valuable insight on stability, durability, and construction, and notions students will need to excel at throughout their education to become future architects. But it is also the ideal stage to introduce the computer-aided design and different interfaces so that they can freely play with voids and solids. for the rest of the semester. For their final project, the students built three-dimensional compositions on assignments we choose that have intersections with other artistic fields. Whether it be literature, cinema, and even fashion, we choose case studies to inspire them in their projects. We encourage students to work in groups for the final project, and the assigned problem is you require them to research and learn from a design adjacent discipline. These examples are from last semester's basic design final project. We assigned students to find parallels between choreography, body, and space. And they ended up researching different categories of dance and appropriating and abstracting bodily moves into three-dimensional compositions. At the end of Basic Design Studio, the students have a fair understanding of the relationship of solids and voids. In the second semester of the first year, we used understanding as a base to develop a sensitivity towards designing architecturally. So the main aim of Architecture Project 2, or the Introduction to Architectural Design, is to expand the experience the students have on formal relationships of solids and voids to give equal attention to topics of program, context, and the site. Our main concern for the course is to introduce context as an input for design to give the relationship of solids and voids an architectural turn and touch. Throughout the semester, they discovered the importance of context in designing habitable spaces while being introduced to proposing and designing a program, which is as important as the formal relations itself. Our curriculum has 3 stages for the studio. First, they were given a site. They visit the site and research the surrounding to have a better understanding of the general context that they will design the project for. They develop and present site analysis as groups. Since it is the first time they are introduced to the notion of the site and context, we came to find it helpful to reconstruct and abstract the site itself first as an in-between activity. That would help them to transform the experience they gained during Basic Design Studio into a more architectural setting. On this stage, they work in groups as the site is relatively large in scale, and we found working in groups useful and provocative in developing their creative mindsets. And as the final project, they designed their individual projects on the reconstructed sites, where they propose their individual programs, which the site analysis they have conducted give valuable insight for. And they design small-scale projects. We would like to give flexibility to the students when it comes to the proposed program, as designing a program itself is an important skill to learn. And by the end of the semester, the main goal for them is to gain knowledge on designing a habitable space while paying attention to human scale, the surrounding, and the context. After briefly summarizing our methods for Architectural Project 2, I would like to talk to you about the specific project I mentioned before. This project we did on the spring semester of 2021. It is called Digital Explorers, Digitalized Explorations, Distant Urban Interventions to Istanbul's Kadıköy. This project is very special for us. As I mentioned, the notion of context and site visits are the central concern for this studio, for this course. Spring 2021 was a time in the midst of the global pandemic. Our first experience with conducting the studio during the lockdown period was spring 2020. We started in March. But by then, the students had already found the chance to do site visits and conduct research on their site analysis. In spring 2021, we in Turkey just got out of a national lockdown, but we had to conduct the studio from afar with students residing all over Turkey. And the possibility of travel was out of question. Without the traditional means of site visits, we started circling around the idea to build a semester project to be inspired by this very impossibility of physically visiting a place. This very notion of digitally accessible sites gave us the idea of the project, Digital Explorers and Digitalized Explorations. The idea was finding means to virtually visit the site and gather as much information as students can. It started as an experiment, and upon discussing the most likely accessible cities around Turkey, Istanbul was our first choice. Kadıköy, located on the Anatolian part of Istanbul, is one of the trendier areas of the city for the last few years. Which makes it very attractive to visitors and tourists, while this popularity opened channels for Kadıköy to be more digitally explorable. When we assigned the project to the students and asked them to find ways to digitally explore the site, we had more traditional known methods in our minds. We were expecting them to go on Google Street View and visit archives and maybe dig up documentaries and vlogs of Kadıköy. However, they came up with the more diverse ways of exploring the site. They discovered Istanbul municipality has established a website named Digital Observation Deck that the visitors can log in and watch the landmark spots in Istanbul from real-time cameras. They even access traffic cams, which we call mobese in Turkish, to access popular traffic routes, while they also investigated street cams and accessed those cams too. They also found vlogs and blogs on Kadıköy. They cleverly used social media as it is the digital depository of our time. And by tracing accounts on Instagram, they managed to form a virtual map of Kadıköy. So they gathered all these virtually accessible ways to trace the site, map the site. Now it comes to the site analysis. But before they started their site analysis, since Kadıköy holds a very dense and large portion of the city, we divided the Kadıköy into smaller portions, and we divided the students to work in groups. We approximately had 120 students that semester. It was very crowded. And they are grouped in, for this project, they were grouped in 16 to hold 68 students for each group. You could also see here how we divided the Kadıköy section into 4 zones. Although every zone had this slightly different characteristic and its own unique texture and demographic, it was interesting to see commonalities between them and in students' analysis. In terms of site analysis, I am not going to show all of the site analysis here because there are a lot of groups, but I'm going to talk about some common themes the students find in site analysis. Some groups were interested in the historical layers, changing texture of the city over years, the effects of urbanization and overall pattern of Kadıköy. They dived into digital archives and followed interviews, documentaries about the site. They treated the problem as if the site is physically accessible and preferred the approach to the site by not focusing on the pandemic conditions or the explorer's perspective, but rather learned about the site through documents collected on the site. It was significant to observe how much they could trace on the site through archives and how much collected data would give clues about the context. Meanwhile, there are a couple of themes in terms of explorers and exploring Kadıköy that seem to excite the student groups. First was, expectedly, the voyeur eye, the explorer's experience in Kadıköy. We started discussing the notion of flaneur, especially in terms of Benjaminian sense as a wanderer and an observer, and how we can reinterpret the flaneur in the 21st century, especially in the pandemic conditions, which brought up many other subjects, including digital nomads, distant visits, and even distant interventions. To a site that was never physically visited, the concept of flaneur and its reinterpretation was significant in this case. Picking up from that point, the tourist perspective became a topic of interest. Some groups developed on the notion of accessibility itself. Our main concern while introducing accessibility as a potential researchable subject was to inspire the students to research on digital accessibility to the site. However, some groups took this one step further and started analyzing the accessibility from a pedestrian's perspective. How can a pedestrian and explorer behave in such a site if it's the first time they're visiting the site? Other groups focused on tourist routes, popular areas, and zones of interest for the visitors. Some even formed maps of vistas from Instagram posts and used them to map the site. While some groups focused more on the voyeur eye, the eye of the visitor, some groups focused on the effects of presence of these voyeurs for the local community and how the presence of tourism affects the neighborhood in terms of privacy, as Kadıköy is mostly composed of residential areas. The themes such as private zones, residential and commercial areas, the user profiles of locals and residents, as well as workers' communities in the area came to focus. It was interesting to see how 2 different groups use the same theme to analyze the site, like mapping through sound and noise. And one focused on is to trace the flaneur's footsteps, while the other used it to trace the areas of privacy, or the effects of visitors' presence on changing texture of commercial zones of the site. On top of that, the aspects that are indigenous to Kadıköy as the center of youth as well as elderly, a central zone for art and music, a zone of many landmarks with a loaded history were discovered by students, which were helpful for them for reconstructing the site and proposing a program later. After they have conducted the site analysis, the students move on to restructure the site, whether it be the physical forms and relations derived from the site, such as the organization of the streets and buildings, the texture of the site, and even slopes and planes of topography, or immaterial and non-physical relationships of the site, such as the users and user profiles, pedestrian routes, dense zone, accessible and inaccessible areas, thresholds, and even user patterns and demographics. The students abstract the relationships they found within the site into a series of solids and voids to design a context-inspired three-dimensional composition with an architectural twist. I will show you some of the examples so that you can better understand how they worked. Again, I'm not going to show all of the examples as there are a lot of groups, but there were some similar themes. But if you are wondering about the other examples, you can go on the link we already shared. So the example you see on the left is inspired by the vistas through Kadıköy. This group used different Instagram accounts and pictures from Google Street View to scan which areas in the site is photographed the most, and the rest they called as black zones. They abstracted the site as two clashing clusters of orthogonal and oblique shapes to design their composition. On the right, the group worked on the travels of sounds and used the noise as a determining factor to trace the areas that are more accessible or popular, contrasting it with the zones that they call noise-canceling zones, as areas that are more private. They used the noise as an input to trace continuity and flow in the site. You see on the left, this group worked on themes of obstacles, borders, and thresholds, the site holes that affects the pedestrian movement, accessibility, and provide possible privacy in a densely visited yet residential area. They used folding as a method to represent these borders, obstacles, and thresholds between physical structures, as well as to present a better pedestrian perspective to the site. On the right hand, the student focused on the duality of the site. While holding a dense visitor population, the site also hosts a large residential area, as I talked about. Representing that duality in two different forms, one flowing in and out of sight, while the other more rigid and static, the group designed overlapping and intermingling layers to represent two clashing populations within the site. On the left, the group focused more on the physical texture and formal relations within the site, approaching to the topography as one big filter, allowing flow and continuity on one side and forming physical obstacles, creating isolated fields on the other. The group created filters on different layers. The topography was a filter, the building facades was a filter, the streets and cul-de-sacs, even trees, each create obstacles or allowed flow within the site, which the group abstracted their forms into. And on the right side, finally, the students analyzed the changing texture of the site through time and designed a composition that is dynamic. Using intermingling cubes, the group traced which physical components of the site has replaced one another so that one can trace the evolution of the site through time in one single composition. After the site analysis and before diving into individual projects, we gave the students 3 keywords to reflect on, which would help them to propose their programs. We asked them to choose an actor. Who are they designing for? An action. What are they designing or to function as what? And finally, if necessary, to choose a medium that would help them to narrow down the action. The actor is doing the action via what? The actors they have chosen varied, designing for different age groups, communities, for wanderers, and even for animals. The actions they came up with was parallel with the project theme of exploring and experiencing, walking, driving, running, and observing. The medium in this case would be the actor is driving via a car, which would shape the program more towards to have a function that is experienced by driving through. From then on, the students proposed their programs. As you can see, there are a variety of exciting topics. they came up with, but they can be summarized in common sub-themes: places embracing the subculture of Kadıköy or indigenous to Kadıköy, places for the pandemic, the new normal, places that are inclusive, as well as spaces specifically designed for wanderers. The individual projects then were developed over these programs. So in the final stage, the main aim for the students is to design spaces that are habitable, designed with the consideration of human scale and a function. They expect them to have a sensitivity towards and having grasp on skills, such as attaining functions for each space, considering circulation and accessibility through spaces, and a basic understanding on the scale and use of spaces. I will show you some examples of individual projects so that you can observe, but I'm not going to explain them in detail. Again, you can see it in our digital exhibition. But the point of me showing here that maybe you can trace how these skills we have been talking about came to life in these individual projects. Hopefully, what we can trace here that you can see each stage in our curriculum, from site analysis to reconstructing the site to proposing a program and finally designing a habitable space. So you can see that while the students still work with geometrical forms and their relations with each other, they develop the awareness that those forms now hold functions. The main principle here is to provide them with the knowledge that, first, the base of architectural design is form as well as function. And secondly, the context affects and shapes the form as it affects the program of any architectural entity that is built. While the program that students proposed are inspired by the context itself, it is also important to note that the individual functions of each volume they design works in harmony with the other volumes. As our main aim for the studio is to guide the students to design their projects as a coherent whole with the context and in itself, while keeping in mind that this is the first time the students face such a challenge for designing a space with a function, and the fact that the projects are expected to have a raw edges. We believe it is important in this stage to build an awareness on the site, the surrounding, the function, and form relationships of not one solid to another void, but of a habitable space to another habitable space. We believe introducing the site, the context, the program, the function, and the scale in this stage help the students get ready for their later years in the architectural education, when their knowledge on designing architecturally refines and finesse. We also believe that architectural project 2 acts as a necessary intermediary between basic design and other studios, where the problem of design gets more complicated and more intricate. With this final note, please do not hesitate to ask about projects that I will happy to explain in detail in our teaching methods, or about our students, or our demographics. Anything comes to mind. While ending, I would like to thank dear Professor Pınar Dinçkalaycı and her team for this unique opportunity. I'm humbled to present as a part of this series. And if you like to find out more about us and our studio's works, you can find us on Instagram at Atölye 307, or you can physically visit us at our department at the room 307. This is the link of the projects are here, but dear Gizem, I think shared that in the chat section. This is all from us. Thank you again for listening.
Dear Senem, thank you very much. It was a very enjoyable presentation. Every semester, every end of the semesters, I look at your Instagram page and see lots of such kind of nice looking forms. I didn't know the background. In fact, I didn't know that they were starting with the urban analysis and ending very unique, very small, tiny spatial pieces were also designed. I'm really happy to be able to make it visible for everybody, especially in the school as well. I'm sure your friends know it, but I really didn't know that you were starting with the urban context. Mm-hmm. Congratulations to you and also to the other people. You were a very crowded team. You are a very crowded team. To the other members of the team. Very well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you left us with a lot of questions. I'm sure the audience has lots of questions as well. Dear audience, you can write your questions in the chat session. So after all presentations, we can direct them to the right person you are asking to. Okay, thank you, Senem.
Thank you.
And now I think it is turn to İrem's. Dear İrem, would you please share your screen, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Pınar Hocam. I will share my screen now. I hope everything is okay.
This is fine. Yes, perfect.
Hi to all once more. Thank you to EF's organization for giving us such an opportunity to share our design studio studies with each other. We think that it helps a lot to provide a multi-perspective look on architectural design education. Today I will make a 30 minutes presentation that I believe will not tire you much. In the presentation, firstly, to tell you who we are, I will introduce you the studio team. Secondly, to explain what we do, I will talk about the design approach of the studio and the thematic series we handle. Thirdly, to tell you how we do design education in the design studio, I will talk about the studio pictorializations and the studio works. Furthermore, I will show you the outreaching studio activities which we arrange as a part of our studio pictorialization and use to feed the studio. Later on, to exemplify a whole studio term, I will give you two examples from the series of contemporary codes of architecture. That are namely States of the Body and Space, which was an e-studio that we have performed in remote learning conditions of the pandemic period. And the Spectacle Space 1, which we have performed face-to-face thanks to the process of normalization. And finally, in conclusion, I will tell you very little about what we do this term, and I will finish. Now I like to start introducing the studio team. As my professors and colleagues know, we set up Atelier Z with Adnan Hocam in 2014. At Atelier Z, he is a source of inspiration for all of us, both professionally and in many fields of life. And he has a great share in our professional upbringing. Unfortunately, he cannot participate actively now due to the conflict with another program that he had to attend, but he is in the Zoom and listening remotely, I hope. Since we set up the studio, which we established as an autonomous space to carry out our experimental design research and studies, many of our colleagues have joined the studio part-timely in different processes and in different ways. Later on in 2018, Tuba Ersen has joined us. She's here now. Since then, Tuba Hocam, myself, and Adnan Hocam together formed the full-time staff of the studio. In addition, we have part-time colleagues who contribute to our studio with great devotion, and without them, everything would be really incomplete. Ezgi Başar, who is here now, is one of them. She has not spared us her support even for a single day since the setup of the studio. Senem Yıldırım is another of our colleagues for whom we are grateful for her contributions. She hasn't spared us her support even for a single day also. We are very grateful for her contributions. She has been with us throughout the series of codes of contemporary architecture. And Deniz Uygur, I hope she is listening also. one of our colleagues who was with us throughout the Codes of Contemporary Architecture series, and we are very grateful for her efforts either. In addition to our esteemed part-time teachers, our former students and now our current colleagues were with us this term. I want to introduce them to Senem Görücü, Sefa Ercan, Selcan Ünal, Beyza Saral, and Emin Akdemir. Thank you all for being here and your precious contributions to our studio this term. As you see, we are a very crowded team too. Now I'd like to continue telling about our our studio's design approach and thematic series we handled. Firstly, I'd like to explain why we call the things we do as excessively undisciplined works. Sorry. In Atelier Z, we create studio pictorializations to activate the experimental nature of design. In this direction, we attach importance to researching and experiencing experimental processes in which the design act goes beyond the determined predictable cycles of operation, and where unpredictable jumps and simultaneous processes can occur. We aim to open up beyond the defined, accepted boundaries of architecture and to use the design act as a discovery tool on a slippery ground where everything about architecture can become unstable. As you know, the existence of things themselves is much about the influence of what is outside of them, as it is about themselves. Opening up outside of the things center, outside of architecture, outside of ourselves means opening a space for thinking and acting to help things to come out of their own existence. Thusly, by taking distance, we look to existing things and ourselves again from a different perspective, and we inquire into the opportunities to reestablish both. Within such an opening outside the center, while being active beyond the accepted limits of architecture, it can be transformed into a creative process when the risks can be reduced to a tolerable level. Taking distance from the created, the produced, and the accepted allows to discover new creation possibilities, because we gain a perspective that enables us to realize the unactivated potentials of existing. For this reason, we think that off-center has the potential to become a medium for creating such a distance, thanks to its otherness that penetrates almost to the center. And excessively undisciplined works situating off-center refer to the products of such a creative effort. Thanks to the loosening and dissolving structures of centers belonging to different disciplines towards the periphery, the possibility of meeting different disciplines outside the center arises. In the fluidity of the off-center, spontaneous formation of interaction fields takes place. Of course, there's always the risk of getting lost in the uncertainty of the decentralized interaction. Here, as Atelier Z, we take this risk and explore the ways to use the design act as a tool to control uncertainty and establish new productive connections with the possibilities provided by such interaction. With this approach, we fictionalize studio around widespread thematic frames, which allow to move away from the center and establish relations with different disciplines. Looking back, we have fictionalized many thematic series so far. I can list the series whose posters you see on the screen as follows. The first one of this series was the Figure of the Architect, which was a series spanning 6 periods of study. It is fictionalized to interrogate on the definition of architecture and the identity of the architect. Simultaneous to the series of the Figure of the Architect, We fictionalize another series specific to the final project, that is namely Back to the Future and the Gecekondu. It problematized design of the future urban settlements in context of the formation and construction forms of the Gecekondu. Later on, we continued with the States of the House, which was a short series and which spanned only 2 periods of study, in which we interrogated the potential of house to form urban structure by way of transforming into special structures such as tea house, powerhouse, courthouse, bakehouse, and etc. Later on, we fictionalized a much longer series, Codes of the Contemporary Architecture, which spanned 8 periods of study. The examples I'm going to show you today are also part of this series. Before moving on the examples, I'd like to tell you about our studio fictionalization and types of works that we produce in the studio generally. I like to draw just a topology of all those years. Like many other studios that have made presentations within the scope of IED, Atelier Z is also a vertical design studio. With the advantage of being a vertical studio, the connections established at different class and program levels not only increase and reinforce architectural knowledge manners of the studio, but also give the studio a design research environment identity. At the same time, the synergy of the students of different ages and knowledge levels provides the unique source to produce a unique studio know-how. We carry out design studies with the synergy of a group of approximately 60 to 70 people together with the coordinators and students in each study period. We are fed by the differences in students' knowledge and experience levels and content of their experiences. At Atelier Z, we usually set up a study period in 2 parts. In the first part, which we call excessively undisciplined works, we work with broad design context and focus on the production of artistic works without restricting the studio team within the boundaries of a particular design discipline. In this section, which spans a period of 5 to 6 weeks, we carry out design work in groups of 6 to 10 people. In this section, it is important for students to become acquainted with the use of different tools to structure their thoughts, develop their skills in using these tools, and gain different perspectives to address a design problem. We release the use of all kinds of digital or analog tools to establish relationships with different disciplines. We usually share the works we produce in this part by constructing installations, and we place them in the existing spaces of the faculty we work in. Studios, corridors, gallery spaces, stairs, entrance halls, garden, and etc. During the pandemic period, we continued this by trying to transform our digital working environments. In accordance with the content of this section, we form a jury consisting of artists, painters, sculptors, musicians from different professions, and designers and architects also, of course, and evaluate the works produced, organizing an event open to the participation. Sorry, I just made a mistake to transit the slides. I will go on. In the second part of the studio, which we call undisciplined works, it is reserved for a space. It is reserved for space design studies. In this section, which spans 8 to 10 weeks, we want students to establish the context of their own design problem, to design the program of their spatial fiction, and to create a structural form for it within the framework of the studio team. In this section, we attach importance to the use of different ways of doing and the use of acquired skills learned in the previous section in the formation of the expression of space. In this direction, we support forms of hybridization with the interactive use of all kinds of tools. We aim to enable students to produce architectural works as craftsmen may. We present the works produced in this section for the evaluation of a jury consisted of architects, and we mostly organize the jury in architectural sharing environments open to everyone. In cases we do not divide the working period in the studio into two, we create a fiction in which these two parts are intertwined. There will also be projects showing the spatial designs, the architectural projects, but I missed it, I think. So I will just try to show you if it's possible. To make it forward, but okay, maybe in the end, if I have time, I will do it again. Now I like to tell you very little about the outreaching studio activities. Like many studios, we give importance to studio trips, and also we organize studio talks, studio juries and school exhibitions open to everyone. And also we give importance to studios competition participations. We give importance to organize extracurricular exhibitions and panels on architectural sharing environments. Contemporary Codes of Architecture series, focusing on this. I like to tell you a little bit about what the topics are about. The first theme of the series was puzzle architecture and memory of space. We have developed it to explore and reconstruct the contextual, programmatic, and structural codes that make up the city by construct them together with temporal codes. Second theme of the series was force to flow of steel. We discussed the natural elements that were effective in the formation of the city and special potentials suppressed by the tendency to domesticate them. The third theme was 2020 plus 20. We proposed the Arctic region as the problematic field in a 20-year time span from the present to the future. We have opened the codes of contemporary architecture to discussion in a geography where established codes have not yet been formed. The fourth theme of the studio series was States of the Earth. We interrogated the natural and artificial formations that make up the Earth, such as geographical, urban, social, cultural, and etc. We have proposed 6 continents as problematic fields to deal with the codes. The fifth theme of the series was States of the City. In fact, the previous theme, States of the Earth, and the next theme, States of the Body and Space, are closely related. We searched states of space through these themes. This was also a theme that we questioned before in States of House series. The sixth theme was the states of body and space that I will show you tonight. Was a theme that addressed the body as a space constitutive structural element on the one hand, and on the other, it problematized space as a mechanism re-establishing the body. The seventh and eighth themes of the series were spectacle spaces. A playful architecture constituted the conceptual framework of production activity. Through the period, we searched for ways to establish design activity as a festival and questioned and designed the carnivalesque space fictions in daily life. Now I like to detail these two series, Space of Body and Space. It was a studio period that we designed in two parts also, conducted in remote learning conditions. We reserved the first part of the studio, spent 5 weeks to grasp the body in operational continuities and discuss it in context of its spatial extensions. The students, who were divided into 8 working teams of 9 to 10 people, carried out the works they produced individually in interaction with each other, and they created teamworks by associating their individual studies using the possibilities of the virtual environment. Examining the movements of the body in terms of different action teams, the design teams produced works focusing on recognizing the body with analog and digital models at the beginning of the process. Each student created models with their own body measurements in accordance with their own body characteristics. Afterwards, the movement poses, the transitions between these poses, and the bodily elements that create the poses were investigated. They used various topological mapping methods that made visible the motions, forms of action, and studied the spatial patterns created by the body. As a result, each design team produced bodily movement diagrams, both individually and collectively. By applying certain analysis and association methods within itself, and established its own discussion on the action team they deal with. In the part of undisciplined works, students were divided into 23 design teams, and each design team chose a theatrical text and designed a performance space related to the content of the text. The design teams produced works in different cities in the context of Turkey. They also gave importance to creating special constructs that would function as public spaces in the city. Choosing a theatrical text, analyzing it, and turning it into a special fiction, while doing this, discussing it in the context of the public special contents it created, and evaluating it in the context of the body and space relationship was a challenging process, and the students were not accustomed to. On the other hand, our students reached the design environment and tools they had never known by establishing interdisciplinary relations and tried to develop their own unique ways of thinking and doing. They created play fictions in line with the theater text and produced animation in the spaces that they designed themselves. Spectacle Spaces 1, again, it was a studio period that we designed in 2 parts, but this time we conducted face-to-face. The first part of the studio, which spent again 6 weeks, was devoted to discussing and experiencing festive carnivalesque spatial setups. Through the works they designed, our students tried to transform the physical education environments on the 3rd floor of the school and to create festive space setups. Divided into 9 working teams of 6 to 7 people, the students discussed the studio team through the different conceptual contents, transformed the educational environments and the encounter spaces of the faculty via playful spatial setups, and rethought them as productive playgrounds. In their performance-based works, they handled contemplation on different levels of encounter and interaction. With the participation of jury members from different disciplines, we had the chance to set up and experience the jury we made face-to-face at the school in a festive atmosphere. just continuing like this. And the part of undisciplined works, we devoted the remaining 10 weeks of the term to redesign of the multiple campus area where our students are studying. Divided into 24 study teams of 2 to 3 people, the students search for ways to recreate the campus area in an urban context with a playful fiction. Considering the parcel on which the campus is located as a volumetric wall, the groups considered the spatial, programmatic, and structural reconfiguration of the volume that is outside the existing buildings as the main design problem. However, depending on the design ideas the groups developed in the process and the relations they established with the city, they also interfered with the buildings within the parcel, and they proposed structures that expanded outside the parcel. Although the works produced are diversified with different perspectives and conceptual contents, the establishment of new interaction layers, the creation of meeting spaces, and the development of new programmatic setups that allow mutual spectacle considered important in all works. Now, as we approach the conclusion, I will talk a little bit about what we are doing this term. Spectacle spaces too. While we continue with this theme, this time we have given the whole city of Ankara as a problematic field instead of working in a specific urban area. And we consider the theme of spectacle in the context of life capsules. In this period, we have fictionalized the studio in a single part, constructing the operations that we have done in 2 parts in the previous periods by blending them to the whole process. We bring forward the potential of the capsules to be designed for various programs to transform the city and its inhabitants. We aim to build encounter fields where individual life practices and collective urban life activities can affect each other. We focused on material experiments as well as contextual and programming functions in studio works, which we created by giving a volumetric upper size limit of 15 to 15 to 15 meters. Now, in addition to the production of original materials, special fictions created with the extraordinary use of the existing materials are also taking shape in the studio. Thank you for listening. You can find detailed information in our web addresses. At the end of this period, we will organize an exhibition, and you are all invited in advance also. And thank you for giving me the speech. And I like to show the missing parts maybe later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear İrem. I want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate Professor Adnan Aksu, and I want to congratulate the other members of your group, of your studio. I think all you do is very valuable, especially the parts you're encouraging students to step out of their own bodies and their own characters and try to discover the world. Your methodology, I think, encourages this. And also, I'm really thankful for the school's space. Whatever you do there really enriches our school environment. We start thinking about, oh, what is this? Why is it here? And what does it tell us? I think this is a big contribution as well, not only to your studio, but also to the people who are not in your studio in that semester. You are doing a lot for the school. Thank you very much and congratulations again.
Thank you for your kindness first. We are all happy to hear this. Thank you very much.
Okay, now this is turn of Bartosz. Dear Bartosz, may I invite you for your speech, please?
Hello.
Hello?
Good morning, everyone. So should I begin?
Yes,
This time?
please.
Okay.
This is evening, by the way.
And let's see the share screen, just that everything's all right.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Is it visible? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Bartol Sawaki, and I am a young PhD researcher at the Bialystok University of Technology, Faculty of Architecture, the best faculty out there in terms of Bialystok University. In regards to what I do and what I specialize in and what we do as our university, to better understand our specificity, I think it's quite important to mention that we are located where we are located. We have this very unique spot in terms of the world that we are not afraid of and not ashamed of. It is the Podlasie region, and if you're ever in Poland, this is the place to go and this is the place to visit. These are just some of the screenshots from Travel Podlasie. This is one of the one of the best images in terms of how you can possibly find Podlasie if you travel here. But in regards to our university and why our location is important is that we're not the biggest city. You know, we're not the capital. We are the capital of this province, which is Bialystok. But we're unique in terms of our approach to the way that we design and to the way that we have our students design anything, because as you may or may not know, our faculty, which is the Faculty of Architecture, it may be one of the older ones in terms of Poland, but then again, it's young in its design approach, and we tend to revert our practices quite often and approach design topics a little bit differently every 5 years, every 6 years. So our faculty is not very popular with populace. We have three courses: graphic design, interior design, and architectural design. And in regards to just maybe with a little bit more background, graphic design is a little bit more traditional than it would have that you may all be accustomed to in terms of computer graphics. There is a lot of traditional based either photography or traditional methods that I am not a little bit aware of, as graphic design is a little to the side of us. Like I do not teach at graphic courses, but we see their works every day. You know, we pass them by and we see them doing their magic day in and day out. But in regards to our faculty, to the interior design and architectural design, our design focus is a little bit widespread, but it does revolve around the use of wood, as we are, like I said, the Podlasie region is very natural. It is very woodly populated in terms of our forestry and of our natural landscape, and so our designs are usually wood oriented, and in the recent times we have been experimenting with more architectural design concepts in terms of the use of wood, of the use of with the use of sustainable materials, but then again with the use of traditional design approaches to the use of wood. So but our faculty is a little bit different from the other ones because we do tend to go a little bit crazy with some of our designs, and we have students approach designs a little bit more nonchalantly, if I can call it that way, as the few first semesters of our studies are very fluid quality in terms of the way that we approach designs, because we believe, and this is my professor's Professor Alexander Hasanovich's approach, that design shouldn't be held captive in terms of just a building, but just to allow for the freedom of mind and the freedom of creativity to flourish, and not held it captive as our government's what we call rules and regulations that strictly limited the studies in Poland in general would like us to have to get done to. So we are kind of constrained in terms of the way that what we can do, what we can't do. So we have to very strictly revolve around the regulations. And this, at one point it's a good thing, one point it's a bad thing. We see it more of a bad thing, but we still kind of manage. So as you can see here, we try to surround ourselves with art. And this is one of our more recent ambience salons where we have live mixed ambient music played. It's kind of like a concert for sleeping at our faculty. So we do fall asleep at our faculty with a good intention. And like I mentioned, we like to design and incorporate design into what we do, and we like to be involved in this design. So one of our faculty's more recent, I guess you can call it important events is East Design Days. This is already the third year going. So this will be the fourth edition of a series of events and a few days of promoting this, talking about design, and involving young designers, experienced designers, our students, not only our students, but also, like, let's call it the eastern facade of Poland, and the way that we approach design thinking, form finding, and design promotion, because this is also something that is a little bit lacking in terms of the creativity sector in Poland, especially in the eastern sections. So these are some of the images, and some of are less regulated approaches to design. And this is not strictly in my design studio that I work with, because I do work with more virtual productions and virtual designs. But just to show you how our students also approach design, we like to incorporate the traditions in the wood into our work. So this is actually one of the books that was created by a science club at our faculty, which focuses on the creation of and the use of traditional Polish housing and wood design in the promotion and the prevention of destruction of traditional wooden houses, because as we are booming in terms of our residential sector, in terms of building high rises do tend to swell up a lot of traditional sites, and this is something that we are kind of combating at this point. So this is a little bit of a very important aspect for our faculty, but of course we do also participate in design competitions and host a numerous amount of different design for our region and for our regional offices for the governments, and so this is a very recent design that was picked for not production, but for implementation in terms of our public space in Bialystok. So this is a more monumental design for our city of Bialystok. We do also involve our students in more traditional and landscape architectural design, as well as the implementation of traditional values in architectural design, as well as with the Dubai Expo in 2020. Our students designed Poland's interior, one of our interior expos areas for the Polish pavilion. And so we are also trying to incorporate that way of thinking back into our region, to not only promote what was done at the Dubai Expo, but also to use this as a tool for reaching out to the general public, and to use this as a tool for design teaching about the importance of wood and wood in architectural design in everyday life. Besides wood, we also like concrete. One of the things that maybe we shouldn't be so enthusiastic about as one of our colleagues from the IED organization mentioned, the concrete is one of the most destructive things that have been ever invented and used in architectural design and in construction. It is still something of nature to us, like a second nature in design. So our students also tend to use this as one of the main construction means for design thinking and design approach in architectural design. As well as the older students, we also like to incorporate some of the young future faculty members and students. We tend to reach out with very simple but yet effective means of involving the local community, and to reach out to the youngest ones, and to show that even though we are I guess you could call it a more serious body in terms of the city, we can still host the young generations to reinvent the space with very simple means, which is just basically painting and creating new spaces without much design involvement, just to kind of reach out and show that we are here and we are open to the young generations. But in regards to the studio, which is actually called a laboratory, and in the past, I think 2 or 3 weeks, we did get accredited. The laboratory is called Aurela. This is still something that we are trying to name and make it concise. So this is we don't have the official logo yet. We are kind of fresh. We are kind of new, and based on the previous presentations, I can honestly say that I am the new guy, and this is something I'm not afraid of. But I am trying to implement as much knowledge that I get from these kinds of presentations to our faculty and to our students, and from both our Polish students and our Erasmus students. And in terms of the cave environment, and this is something of a hassle for us for the past several years, as the cave has been present at our university for around 10 years, but due to some technical difficulties and of the nature of simply being there a little bit too early for its time, for the past several years, we couldn't really work too much with the cave environment, up until recently, where we did get some more support from NVIDIA and from the Unreal Engine software. We were finally able to relaunch the cave environment, and to be able to use the cave for future research and for student use, due to the fact that beforehand it was all created on a very non-open source software. Everything was hidden, everything was hard, and everything had a lot of problems and technical dissolutions, not even solutions, dissolutions that were hard for us. And so we started to play around with very advanced technologies, which is just a hard hat with a Vive tracker, to finally be able to use this setting in the way that it should have been used, which is with body tracking, with eye tracking, with a few other implementations such as the stereoscopy. But due to other problems, this is still something that we are working on. But we kind of have decided to use this setting as more of a promotional approach to design rather than a research-oriented space, due to the fact that in the meantime, virtual reality headsets have become more affordable and a little bit more involving in terms of the way that students use them. So we are kind of gathering hardware at the moment. We cannot involve a whole classroom of 16 because we usually have classes of around 16 students at once. But we are trying to involve as much as we can with the limited hardware that we own at this point. But in terms of our students, we like to experiment, and we like to see what students come up with little to no input at some points. And so with my design classes that I hold, I also teach for the first year and the beginning of second year. But due to, like I mentioned, the student nature, the nature of the Polish studies, classes don't really intertwine in between each other, and so we are a little bit limited. But we still like to use the time we have to allow students to approach design and approach architectural design in a little bit different fashion, as in to not focus on the fact that this will ever have to be constructed. And this is one of the examples that I like to show, where students were tasked to basically design their fears. And this is one of the better works that came out of this classroom. And I am not afraid to say, usually like 50% of my ideas fail. And this is something I think that I have to get used to, that the student either understands the concept and will design their task, or they basically don't want to understand it and they just want to get through class. And so we tend to focus on that 50% that likes to be engaged. And this is one of our students. This is a third semester works. This is actually one of the first time that the student had any experience with 3D modeling. And this was done in Blender at the time. And we also like to use as much open source software as we can and whenever we can. And so this was, I think, the fear of losing a sibling, because she had a twin sister. So this is the way that she approached the topic. And I know this might not be architecture. This for some, this might look just kind of like a grotesque shape or a grotesque approach to 3D models. But then again, in the metaverse and in the inevitable time and space that we will find ourselves in the next 10 to 15 years, why can't this be a house? This is something I'm trying to push forward, as well as with my PhD thesis, which revolves around the use of irregular spaces or online living spaces, online social platforms as a medium for the next generation of architects and the next generation of architectural design, as has been shown last month. And it's almost 1 month, 1 month prior, where information showed up about Zaha Hadid architects designing the metaverse library for Meta's metaverse horizon. Will it work? Probably not. I'm a little bit skeptical, even though I push these topics. But then again, if this won't work, something in the future will. And so if there is groundwork done with the students in this kind of design topics, we can hope for a more human or virtual human or transhuman oriented metaverse or virtual reality architecture than if this kind of work was not to be done prior to such design approaches. And these are some more of like fluid simulations that we have been doing with our students, just to kind of grasp the and to show students, first of all, how to approach design thinking and how to approach problem solving, because this is something also that I have noticed when doing such topics, is the more information that I provide my students during the course, the less actually they learn. And this has been going on for a few years, whether prior to COVID, during COVID, or now after COVID, is that I have started to involve much more tutorial-based learning for the students, and to have them reach out by themselves for very simple problems that have generally very simple solutions, but it's just a matter of actually looking for the solution. And up until recently, the classes that I have been holding resided upon me teaching, showing, and then expecting work to be handed in. But now it's more like giving a topic, showing a few good ways of approaching the topic, and then not really hoping for the student to be of asking nature, but more of showing nature. So maybe a little bit of a reverse classroom. This is something that I would like to try in the near future. But then again, it's maybe it's a dream for the near future. But besides our studies, along with a few students, we also have done some maybe not really commission work, but more of a design oriented, more 3D oriented works with kind of historical topics. This is a project that we have done with our local the local archives, National Archives in Bialystok, where we have scanned around 21 different wax insignias from original documents from around the 18th, 17th, 19th century. And so we have scanned them, we have created 3D models of them, and then we 3D printed them. They are actually currently being reprinted for more educational purposes, and we're based on display at the National Archives. And for some people, this might be just like a open and closed project, but then again, we learn a little bit more about the approach to how we can use very easily destructible objects, and just to show the students that architecture is not really just about architecture. It is a little bit more about finding inspiration in things that have almost little to nothing to do with architectural design. And so I still hope to use this as a base for other designs. I'm kind of looking for a more student-friendly approach to this, as a lot of this had to be done in-house with several hundred hours of working with the models, and the learning curve was a little bit off the grid for the first year. So I'm trying to rework the way that we created this output to use more desk on hand and low tech approach in regards to form finding and architectural form finding. But besides the actual designs, I would also like to show a little bit of a space that we tend to use in the past half year for exploration in terms of the metaverse and the future metaverse. And the platform is called VR Chat, and I don't know if you have been acquainted with it. At this point in time, it is used more of a social platform for individuals of very unique approach to life. I can't really say anything else other than that, but it is a platform where the online populace can design their own spaces upload the spaces and share the spaces for free prior to a few conditions being met, which is basically being an online active user for a similarly long time. And let's say for a few months, like 2 or 3 months prior, have to be a active member. And so at this point in time, I'm Wallace, which just to show you that this is me right now walking around, but not to only show me as a avatar. The spaces created by the online populace, they're not created by architects or architectural students. Most of these spaces that we find in online social platforms, they're created by totally random individuals that have little to no architectural design background. And I've begun to notice that more and more of these spaces are becoming apparent in recent times. Then again, and they're constantly shifting around in terms of their population status, in terms of their existence. At this point, I kind of grieve to see that 2 of my favorite spaces have been deleted due to their non-popularity, but of architectural importance or architectural theme. And just to show some of the more populated spaces, I'm not going to show with the populace because I do not trust the online people. And there's just a lot of obscurities that will be apparent when there are others. So this is one of the specificities of the online worlds. And spaces like this that will seem just kind of like a box with a background of clouds. This is the future of, in my opinion, this is the future of architectural design. This is the future of spatial design, and these are the needs that of the online populace that, whether we like it or not, will have to take place in the next several years as these spaces are becoming hugely populated. I mean, we're talking about tens to hundreds of thousands of views per day for the more populated sites. And while this site in particular may not be the most popular, the sites that tend to be of more populace. Once again, I'm going to show a empty one just so we don't bump into some strange people. This is one of the more popular sites, and it's kind of mind-boggling to see that, first of all, this was created by not an architect or of no architectural background person, just a person learning on YouTube tutorials. But then again, the online populace chose this as one of the most popular spaces to visit, and they stay there for hours and hours on end. And this is something that I'm showing my students and providing them with some information in regards. A very tiny space is kind of like a room with a small terrace, and that's it. And this is one of the most popular spaces. And just people sit there and they just talk, and they just play around, and they just goof off, and they do a lot of weird different things. And it's just a matter of that it's a space within space, and that's it. That's like that's the shallow version of the approach to these spaces. But then again, is it really just this kind of space? I mean, this is something that I'm trying to figure out with my students, and trying to see why certain lesser quality areas are being immensely popular at certain points in time, and how it's changing how the approach of the virtual human or the transhuman is shaping the way that we should be teaching architecture, and what it really means to be a designer, and do we really need to be a designer in order for someone to create space? As you can see here, this space is what we can I'll say it's nothing special. It's just kind of like this little exterior shack in a rice field. But then again, this is one of the more populated spaces in virtual reality, and this is something that we'll be colliding with in the next several years, that we will see bad designs being immensely popular, and we'll be seeing, and we of course, we don't want to teach our students to create low quality designs and low quality spaces. But then if the human populace chooses these spaces and prefers these spaces, it makes them popular, then how will our students and how will our design studios cope with the fact that people won't choose those spaces and render the young designers incapable of being of use in the virtual space in the metaverse, when a tutorial based online designer will excel and exceed all of their expectations and basically render our students incapable of being designers for that space. So this is something that I also wanted to express and just to show that I also at this point do not understand it completely. I am starting to see a few things, and there are a few reasons for some of these decisions in terms of the people. And you know, if you see a pub, of course you're going to want to go into an online pub and pretend that you're drinking a pint with friends. But then again, are the people really drinking? Is this really a pub, or is this just another space that looks like a pub, and so on and so forth? So the function and the way that is designed, it really influences architectural design for the online spaces immensely at one point. But it is not the only reason why people are choosing these spaces. So some of them are of good quality, some of them are bad quality. And at our design studio in Bialystok University of Technology, we are trying to cope with creating a new approach to design teaching and seeing if we can perhaps maybe not overstep, but better prepare for the near future, and to see what we should be implementing in our designs, as well as the design approach for the near future to be of use to our students and our staff, so we won't be left without a job. So thank you for your attendance, and thank you for your views, and I hope to still hold the conversations to you soon. So this is, if anyone is interested, this is the quickest way to contact me via email. So thank you.
Thank you, Bartol.
I can't really hear anything. Am I the only one?
No, I cannot hear either. I think
okay.
it's
Is it okay now?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm really also interested in these VR things and the metaverse and the other stuff which has been happening very popular nowadays. And it's very interesting that you're also studying it with your students. It's also some kind of sociological research, isn't it? What people like and what people do not like about the spaces, what people value. I mean, architects may be valuing a lot what, for instance, the sustainability issue, the form issue, the function issue, but even the most primitive thing, even the most basic thing can be favored by many people who are not architects.
The online populace is very specific. I mean, their decisions of what's popular and what's not, why they choose it, it's half the time it's irrational, half the time it's very unnatural. But then again, it is, and so maybe this is kind of like a new field of where we can excel in the near future. So I mentioned the fact that the online populace and the way that they choose the spaces and what we can learn from the virtual human for the near future would be immense. And I think in terms of the architectural design and like who an architect is and what or who it isn't, will be shifting and perhaps may diverge into a whole different field of expertise, because I can't really imagine my colleagues from traditional architectural design to suddenly shift their focus into design spaces where the virtual human could be a dot placed on a bigger dot, and we can design that dot. And on my seminars in regards to my PhD, the questions that were asked during the talks all relied on real world architecture, and this is architecture that we should be never touching physically. I mean, unless we have haptic hardware, and that will induce more immersibility in virtual reality. These are things that shouldn't really mix, due to the fact that we'll be decleansing virtual reality architecture and not being able to create the spaces that we would normally create. If we could stop gravity at this point and just go into VR and pretend there's no gravity, that'd be the best, because then we would be truly free. But I tried laying on the ground with a VR headset. It's not fun, and I've learned that males are incapable of being suspended with, like, say the heads down, and we can't, as guys, we just can't really get back up after like 2 or 3 times, no matter how fit or unfit we are. So it's the nature of what we could be as designers and what we could provide for the virtual human is still limited to the technology and the solution that we have, but it is being foreshadowed for the next few tens of years. What's up and coming, basically.
I congratulate you. I think you are very brave, because it's an open sea. It's an ocean, in fact, you just jumped into. Not only you, but also with your students. I think you do it. I'm sure years you will be succeeding, becoming very successful in doing something really meaningful. I mean, after seeing designs which were done by non-architects, I'm sure your students will succeed doing something really meaningful, really useful, and really valuable, both society and for architecture. I really congratulate you and your students also.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing it with us as well. Okay, then I see no questions in the chat section. So I will ask my question because this is the end of the series. This is an evening that we are closing a series of events. And I'm hosting young architects. I'm hosting young academics. I just want to learn that when you consider your studio, what kind of future would you dream? When I say the future, of course, I don't mean 20 years, 50 years. And I don't mean the tomorrow either, but I mean next semester. And I mean the 5 semesters later. Towards where would you like to go? Would you like to move your studio to? Dear Senem, can we start with you, please?
Well, today I talked about 2 different studios interacting with each other, but still 2 different modules. So I think I am envisioning 2 different things for these 2 modules. For basic design, I would love to explore more about interdisciplinary learning. We have been experimenting with it for the last 2 years, but only in the form of we borrow case studies to inspire students, usually in the basic design. But there's so much for architecture, there's so much to learn from other fields. We were usually focused on design adjacent fields like cinema, literature, and art. But still we are borrowing cases. But I would love to explore more about methods from other disciplines, not just in artistic fields, but in physics, in biology, in technology. And so that students have this new idea of how to approach a problem, not as only as designers, but from other perspectives too. Bartosz's presentation actually was mind-blowing in the sense that at some point we as educators have to step outside of our comfort zones and have to learn new technologies, not to keep up, but to be a step in front of the process. For the architectural project too, the Introduction to Architectural Design, the whole course was built around context and site visits. But in 2 months, bam, a pandemic came and there are no site visits. So what is our new context? This is what we came up with doing this in-between space. We still have a real context that you can step on if you have the chance to, but you are digitally, virtually exploring it. But one step in from this perspective means that we might as well work in a virtual reality. And the virtual reality may be becoming our context. This metaverse is becoming our new reality. And we, I think, as educators, should keep up with what is happening in the world outside of us. We have so much to learn. It's a lifelong learning experience to be a studio educator, as I have been experiencing from all the professors. And the methods are changing over time. It is inevitable. But today's technology is just pacing in such a pace that it is hard for us to keep up. And Bartosz's presentation was really mind-opening in that sense. Maybe it is important to like play around with this idea of what our new context would be in the next 5 years, or how we can resolve the problem, how we can introduce new problems for our designing, for the introduction to architecture, or for basic design. What does interdisciplinarity mean in our 21st century context, in our new normal? I'm an architectural historian. I am doing my postdoc in art history, and I believe that not only from this futuristic perspective, like borrowing from methods or learning techniques from technology, but we also have a lot to learn from history too. So rather more inclusive teaching strategy for the basic design would be lovelier, I think, from my perspective.
Thank you. What about you, İrem?
I agree with Senem that we have to step out of our comfort zone. She's right. The change is everywhere, but it's not enough to just flow with the change and just be aware of the change. I think we have to get a critical view of it. Why it is changing? What are the conditions? And in the studio, it's also important. I think it's also important for students to get a critical view of what is happening around them. Just as I said in the presentation, just stepping outside of the things that we are surrounded and looking at them from a different perspective, and connecting them with the wholeness of the history, the woefulness of the history, maybe. So I think that it's very important to understand why. It's very important to get into the nature and the essence of the things. So I find very exciting and interesting what is happening nowadays, and that extremely changing things. But it's getting harder to now getting into the deeper and getting into the essence of the things. I think it's very important to find ways in the design studio and also in our lives to understand these things better, how developing new ways to get into this stuff. Thank you.
And in terms of our design studio, if how to answer this question, I would like the studio, and I would like to be able to incorporate what have learned, at least at the minimum of today's presentations, and the way that Senem approaches the methodology, and the way that İrem explores the different aspects of the use of technology and traditional means of design. And I would really like my design studio to be able to at one point to be able to reproduce the ideas over and over, and for me to be able to get a more concise understanding of am I holding my classes or holding my students or directing my students in a way that is making more achievements or making progress, or should I change? But then again, at another perspective, I would also want the design studio to evolve into more research oriented works, just so that in the near future we can basically cement our existence and our efforts to contribute more, instead of just learning and experiencing digital architecture and computer-aided architectural design, just so that it has more of an influx on the greater scale. So for me, being able to participate in such an experience is also very at one point a positive. Although I was a little bit skeptical of my whole approach to this, just due to the fact that maybe it's like a bit scared of am I able to compete, like in a positive sense, to compete with other design studios, but
Sure,
but it showed me that there's nothing to be afraid of, but there's always room for improvement, and there's always ways that we can manage to make this more understandable, make this more relatable, and make this more present in the society of architectural research.
Thank you very much. I think being here at this hour at night, also forcing ourselves to get out of our comfort zones. I want to thank three of you who just did it so willingly, so full-heartedly. I think this is how change can happen. I mean, if no one touches the real problem, if no one discusses about it, if no one presents it, then we do not discuss anything, then we do not observe anything. Tonight, we had opportunity to listen to three valuable approaches, and we learned a lot from them. I'm sure when we go to sleep, when we put our heads on the pillow, there will be some new ideas running in our minds. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to the young people's phrasing, the young people's naming things, the young people's valuing things. I mean, listening all these things from a person who has been involved in this business of teaching for more than 20 years is much different than listening to you. And I'm really happy to hear very nice words, very nice phrasings that is sparkling in my mind. Thanks a lot. I think it was a good ending of this series. As far as I see, there are no more questions. You three made all listeners, I don't want to say shut up, but you just made them mute, let's say. And congratulations for that too. I also congratulate your students who really, I think, love you and follow you and try to discover the world with your approach, through your approach. This is very valuable as well. It is very valuable for all teachers, all the people who are dealing with teaching business. Do any of you have any last words? Dear Senem, do you have?
I just wanted to thank you again, Pınar Hocam, and to your team. It has been a blast for me to be able to present to you here. And also following you, I would like to, if any of our students are here, thank to our students. They are the rock stars of the whole studio. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. İrem?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you. Thank you to Pınar Hocam, Can Hocam, dear Gizem, and to all people in the IETS organization for giving us such an opportunity to share, to discuss, to see each other. It was very precious. I thank to my colleagues also. Their presentations were so exciting and interesting for me. And great thanks. We are all grateful to our students also, their willingness and their exciting way of mannering. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Dear Bartosz?
And I will also like to thank everyone for being here for the talk and for listening. This is for me this is a very constructive experience to exchange ideas, to exchange works, and just to see at which point in my research and in my path to path forward, because I can't really see an exit. I hope there's no exit, like in a positive sense, and just to basically kind of to even interact and hear and see the approaches, which is, you know, it builds, and this is something I'm very thankful for this ability to and thank you for also choosing me to perhaps like summarize also the meetings. So thank you.
Everybody that participated in the seminar is very welcome for the next year's seminars. We'd like to continue on this with our younger academicians, and we'd like to make it more vivid and interactable in the next year's seminars. And we'd all like to see you come and join us. And this is a great way to end this series of seminars where we introduce new ideas and give new approaches to teaching, learning, and improving ourselves. So we are just gonna be here. We're gonna be waiting for our visitors and watchers, followers to come with us, be with us, and we hope to see you again in the next year's seminars. Anything else, dear Pınar Hocam?
I want to say goodbye to everyone who took part in this series and who watched this series. And as the last word, keep following us from our Instagram page, from our YouTube. We will be doing some other things as well. We're planning. Hope seeing you again. So have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good one. Do zobaczenia. Do widzenia.
İyi geceler.
İyi geceler.